I just want to talk about the state of affairs in the international community. So this whole thing that's going on offshore, this is something that people don't tell you and don't talk about. All you see is all the cheerleaders for going offshore, and all of the pumpers and the so-called gurus and the consultants and the professionals out here that, of course, stand to gain in hefty fees to get you to come offshore. But what's really happening is that you're losing your privacy. Good morning, my dear followers. A lot of our audience is about retiring in Cuenca, Ecuador, or some of these South and Central American countries in general. But as you know, I'd like to touch on some of the other issues because it has to do with a lot of the benefits that are portrayed as a part of the complete package of going offshore, and not just retirement. We've done a little bit on Panama, and in this video I'm going to give you a different view on some of the other benefits that are touted as that would apply to some people, productive people that go offshore for their own reasons. So let me know what you think of these kinds of videos, and thanks for watching. I just want to talk about the state of affairs in the international community. Show you what I'm seeing and what I'm finding here. I'm going to show you this article in a minute. I just want to show you the chat before it goes away. This is me, the gray part. Hi there. I was reading your article on beneficial ownership and transparency. Terrific. Is that something you're looking to get more info on? I get what it's trying to say, however, I can't help but notice that it refers to criminality and by default assumes everyone's a criminal unless they're cornered into beneficial ownership. There has to be a remedy for privacy and protection of non-criminal individuals. Otherwise, you're engaging in old-fashioned despotism and authoritarianism. Now look at how he changes. Okay, is there something in particular I can help you with? If you're interested in debating our verbiage, no, I'm not debating. You can call our service team. Okay, well, what happened to terrific, is that something you're looking to get more information on? Okay, well, looks like he's gone. Let's close it and let me show you. I didn't get a chance to tell him he needs to send my message to his lawyers or his legal team. But this is where it's coming from. Increasing regulations. Yeah, we all know increasing regulations. The reason people went offshore is because they were tired of increasing regulations. But now we have increasing regulations offshore. I'm making this video as the other side of the story to all of these people online on YouTube telling you to go offshore. Increasing regulations demand that you know who really controls a company. Well, that's fine. You can know. Here's why companies need to figure it out and how they can achieve transparency more easily. So they're calling it transparency. I don't have any beef with transparency. Assessing beneficial ownership is like looking for a needle in a haystack. Tracing beneficial ownership to owners is difficult, not least due to different national disclosure regimes. Not anymore, not with international standards where everyone is being told you got to do it this way. So what is beneficial ownership? Why does it matter? Well, they're calling a beneficial owner anyone who ultimately, this word ultimately, owns or controls more than 25% of a company's shares or voting rights. Okay, that's fine. Not everyone wants to be identified as the beneficial owner. Now, you can be identified. That might be for good old-fashioned tax avoidance purposes. It might be to prevent authorities tracking proceeds of individual or corporate crime, such as money laundering. I don't like how good old-fashioned tax avoidance is in the same paragraph as money laundering, bribery, and corruption. It used to be that avoiding taxes legally was, not a problem. Might even pull a cloak over state-sponsored terrorism. Okay, in the same paragraph, we're talking about tax avoidance. So this tells me what this is really about. Look, I don't mean that it's not about this other criminality stuff. Historically speaking, Hitler was catching criminals at the same time that he was throwing everybody else to the gas chambers, the non-criminals. So this is just a tactic that's been used historically to achieve a certain objective. Beneficial ownership authorities are on the case. Authorities are fighting back. The an international body that sets standards for anti-money laundering and counter-terrorist financing, has issued guidance from countries on beneficial ownership. And see, they are issuing guidance. This isn't guidance. They're telling you what to do. When they're mandating something as an international standard, it's not guidance. The FAF recommends providing measures that address transparency and beneficial ownership. Adds a series of recommendations that countries should adopt to prevent the misuse of legal persons from being misused for criminal purposes. Okay, so we're trying to catch criminals. There's nothing wrong with that. That's a good thing to do. But what I told that guy in the live chat was that this is fine. It's just this whole article. I want to show you how it's just really heavy on the catching criminals. Alongside this, the 4th EU Money Laundering Directive was published last year to crack down on money laundering, tax evasion, and terrorist financing, making beneficial ownership key provision of concern to corporates. Okay. Also, all this represents a new step towards transparency of the introduction of public registers on the ultimate beneficial ownership of companies and other entities. Okay, so basically what I told the guy was, there has to be a remedy in all of this. When I'm reading this article, what I'm getting from it is that there's a heavy emphasis on the criminals, and there has to be a remedy for non-criminal innocent people to keep their privacy and to protect themselves. Because just as you wouldn't put a child at the edge of a cliff, there is an issue with privacy, which is for the purpose of self-preservation and protection. In other words, making everybody's financial affairs so-called transparent for everybody to see is the same as putting a child at the edge of a cliff, meaning that the criminals and the bad guys now have information that they shouldn't be having. And also, legally speaking, you're doing away with the legality of a corporation being its own legal entity and its own owner. And if that's the case, why have a corporation to begin with? You basically have just nullified part of the benefits or part of the protections, I should say, of doing business with a company from nefarious and people that just pursue other people nefariously. They just make up lawsuits or what have you, for the purpose of illicit gain. So this whole thing that's going on offshore, this is something that people don't tell you and don't talk about. All you see is all the cheerleaders for going offshore and all of the pumpers and the so-called gurus and the consultants and the professionals out here that, of course, stand to gain in hefty fees to get you to come offshore. But what's really happening is that you're losing your privacy, which means when you lose your privacy, you're losing your protection. And so this is what I told the guy on the chat, is there has to be a remedy for non-criminal people, innocent, law-abiding people. And what they're doing is they're removing that. It seems to me that when you write an article and you couple legal tax avoidance with criminality, it shows the true intent and purpose of your so-called guidance that is being issued. So I just want to call a spade, and show you what's going on in the offshore world, so that you can know what's really happening. Just want to end the video with some definitions. Authoritarianism, we all heard it before. Dictionary says the enforcement or advocacy, even advocacy, such as giving guidance, of strict obedience to authority at the expense of personal freedom. That's the thing. At the expense of personal freedom. That's the key, folks. Lack of concern for the wishes or opinions of others. And then tyrannical is exercising power in a cruel or arbitrary way. And then despotic is of a despot or tyrannical. So just so you know the score, guys. And let's see what our friends at Investopedia say. It says that in private companies, for a number of reasons, beneficial owners may not want their name as shareholder of record. and as long as tax laws and other laws are complied with. So we're not talking about skirting laws here. This practice is not illegal in and of itself. And ultimately, this is what they want to be able to do: visualize corporate ownership structures up to and including corporate ownership over 5% or more. Now, this is fine for like public corporations where people have a need to know. But the whole idea, you know, that this should apply to private corporations. I mean, why are they private? I mean, why call them private if this is the kind of... Let me show you something. Definition of transparency. An image, text, or positive transparent photograph printed on transparent plastic or glass, able to be viewed using a projector. So this is for an item. It's not for people, let alone innocent, law-abiding people. This word transparency is not, you know, I mean, if you're engaging in criminality, then you're subject to transparency. But for someone that's a law-abiding, I say law-abiding, but for someone that isn't a criminal, privacy. The state or condition of being free from being observed or disturbed by other people. So that's the privacy is the complete opposite of transparency. And as we've already discussed, privacy is necessary for the purpose of protection. And protection is verified in nature. Just about all organisms in nature engage in self-protection and self-preservation of self. You know, yeah, so. And last but not least, just as an example, right here on Investopedia, in most countries, this is just an example. Real estate registries show the names of owners. In some cases, beneficial owners may not want their name to appear on public records, and then it goes into examples. In such cases, it is common for trustees or other entities. That was back in the day when that provided privacy, but thanks to the new international guidance rules, now everyone's privacy is going out the window. And then it makes examples. For example, famous artists or politicians who may not want their home address to be easily found in public records, so they do not appear personally on title deeds. Wow, really? Politicians, even? The ones that are making the rules for everybody else? So according to Investopedia and others, the only ones deserving of privacy are politicians and famous artists. And remember, the proper use of privacy is what we're discussing here, which is the proper use of privacy for the purposes of self-preservation and protection. In nature, all organisms I know obfuscate themselves in some way. Obfuscate means privacy in order to protect themselves and preserve themselves. Even a simple clam has a shell to recede into. And while snakes and tigers would use their obfuscation, their hiding, in order to strike at you, this idea, this transparency idea, which is the opposite of privacy, the transparency idea would be tantamount to asking everyone to go out into the woods so that we can look at everyone and make sure that we know where the tigers and the snakes are so that, you know, we can avoid them. You see where that's going, right? Thanks for following. We've seen that this idea of transparency is simply a prelude to, potentially a prelude, because we don't know. These people are strangers to us. We don't know what their true intentions are, and one thing leads to another, and pretty soon everything goes downhill, and it all starts with the simple idea that you don't deserve to protect yourself like a simple clam does. And so in conclusion, it begs the question to my mind, in what societies and cultures has the issue of criminality been used as a stick to take away your liberty and freedoms? And what were the results of such behavior being implemented in those societies. I guess you'll need to go study some history, or maybe you already know. Thumbs up to you if you already know. And with that, thanks for listening and have a nice day.